everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 7 of Buddy Daddies, and I'm a little nervous going into this episode, I'm not gonna lie, only because we were talking in the Discord, and I saw on Twitter that, Buddy Daddies has been compared to a lot of things. It's been compared to Spy Family, obviously, but I've noticed more and more it's been also compared to a series called Skate the Infinity, which I understand why. Not that Skate the Infinity and Buddy Daddies have anything in common plot-wise, but the spirit of this show and kind of how the subtext of the content and the spirit, the humor, just the fact that it goes balls to the walls and doesn't care, and it's all succinct. It's a great anime-only series. Feels a lot like Skate the Infinity. It has that same energy and vibe to it, and I love Skate the Infinity. It's getting a second season at some point, so I'm really excited about it, and I hope that Buddy Daddies ends up following suit and gets its own second series and season as well. So, but I like the spirit of it. However, without spoiling anything about Skate the Infinity, episode 7's kind of a whirlwind, and I'm like, oh, and there were some things set up in the preview at the end of episode 6 that people were like, oh, that's just like Skate, remember? And I was like, oh. So I'm a little worried that there's going to be a little trouble in paradise that's been established in this series. I'm a little scared about it, so I'm entering trepidatiously into this episode being like, please don't let anything bad happen to our boys. Not that Karin, whoever Karin is, not that she's going to be a bad thing. I think she's going to be like an auntie to Mary by the end of this. But, I'm like, girl, I don't need a homewrecker, and I don't need somebody that's going to try to break our two boys up or stand in between them and Mary. And I'm afraid she's going to be one of those, at least for this episode and maybe the next episode, and then they'll smooth things over, because that's hopefully how the plot does, but I'm like, so I don't know. But I've got a couple comments before we start, but I'm very nervous about this episode. It's episode 7. We're not to episode 8. I have a rule about episode 8. That'll be next week, but so I do want to make note, Herbatizirum, I'm sure I said that wrong. I always say it wrong, I'm sure. Noted that the staff for the show are also parents. They've interviewed parents for this series, but some of the staff that create this series, that draw it and animate it, are also parents as well. And apparently one of the staff who has a kid is responsible for drawing all of the kid drawings in episode 2. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So if you go back to episode 2 when it shows Mary's classroom and kind of like all the different drawings, and they look like little kid crayon drawings, those are actual child drawings that someone's kid made that they incorporated into the anime. That level of dedication is why I like this show a lot. I'm like, that's freaking cool. And it makes it unique and interesting, and I love it. And apparently the VA who plays Mary was told by her voice acting director to not sound like a, quote, anime child, to sound like a real kid. And that is impressive, because I honestly thought that it was a kid. I thought Mary's voice actor was a legit child until last episode when we see the grown-up version of her, and I'm like, oh, it's a voice actress, and she's made herself sound young for Mary and then makes herself sound more like herself for older Mary. Oh, so again, if you're going to compare Spy Family to this series, Anya sounds like an anime kid, right? Just sounds like a younger voice actress playing a kid. Same for Damien's voice actress in that series. But here it sounds like a child. I was convinced. So I thought that was pretty cool. The only example I can think of in the US of the English dub that happening is, he's played Oz and Ruby, or he played Oscar and Ruby. He played Alphonse in Full Metal Alchemist in the English dub, but he was a kid when he voiced that character, and then now he's a grown-up voice actor. So that's pretty cool, but I liked that. And then finally, Anime Annie talks about Rey. For episode 3, the concept that, Rey wants to keep bringing all these stray animals in. Anime Annie was like, what if Rey, growing up, never got to have a pet because his dad would, use them for lack of better words, target practice? And I was like, oh my God, yeah. So that's why Rey has such an affinity towards Mary and towards animals, because he wasn't allowed to be a kid or have those in his life growing up. I'm like, oh my God. So Rey continues to amaze me. I love that Mary is allowing Rey to reconnect and enact his childhood, and is allowing Kazuki to have the parenthood that he was denied. So And we'll see where Karin fits in all of this as well. But I thought that was really cool. Very, very nice. So before we start, I want to give a special shout out to our philanthropy tier on Patreon. People on Patreon support me by either giving $1 to be on the Discord and be in the polls, or they do $5 to get shows a week early and do Discord in the polls. But there's also a philanthropy tier that people help me to afford the streaming services I use, the software, things like that. And so I want to give a special shout out to Dana, Edgar, Anime Annie, Larry Manning, Truck, and Tyrone. Thank you very much, y'all. I really appreciate all the extra support you give me. It is much appreciated, and y'all are very, very kind for doing so. So all of my love, thank you so much. So thank you guys so much. I am excited, nervous, trepidatious, all the above for this episode. I don't know what's going to happen, but you know what? Maybe it won't be that bad. I say as we're about to start, right? So we're going to start Buddy Daddies episode 7, and we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh, I was really glad this episode did not go entirely the way that I thought it would. I'm really glad. I had in my mind a lot of scenarios. Some people in the Discord had talked about maybe thinking that Karin might have been related to Kazuki's wife, and I was like, that could be, but I thought the blue eyes, she was gonna be connected to Rey, but I feel like we're gonna get Rey stuff later on this season towards the finale. I feel like the Kazuki stuff, I was waiting on us to get Kazuki backstory, and we finally do. And I could see some people being like, oh, we only took an episode to go through it, but that's really all we needed. We just needed to know Kazuki's backstory and to get some connection to that. And what better way to do it than to have someone connect to him that he has a personal relationship with, and it's his wife, Yokazu. We'll see Yokazu. We'll see her name here. It's Karin, his sister, right? So, it's her sister that he was able, his sister-in-law that he was able to connect to. So we got some things filling in the gaps. We got one confirmation of who he's been sending the money to. He's been sending money to her because he feels bad because he left her without her sister and she doesn't want the money. She keeps sending it back. So she must be doing fairly well if she's about to go study abroad in France to go to art school. She must be somewhat doing well off. So she's like, nah, I'm good. But also we get connection to Rio. Rio is technically, by all senses of the word, technically responsible for his wife's death because he's the one that shot the tire and got the guy to go into the semi-truck that blew up. So it's really Rio's fault. So I don't know if Kazuki knew that they were... The thing of it is, what's interesting is, did Kazuki know that Rio was a sniper working with him? Were they working together kind of like Rey and him? That's interesting because then Rio has met Miri. So if he finds out that Miri is connected to Kazuki and he knows Kazuki from working with him prior, what is that dynamic going to do? What's that relationship going to be about? So interesting. But I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of subtext in this episode. There's a lot of subtext. And I was like, I was just like, okay, show, you might as well just say it. Kazuki, our bisexual king. I'm like, you might as well just say it. Let's just get to the ground. Because the subtext is there. It was mentioned multiple times. We're going to go through it. But I was just like, I'm glad that Karin is a source of positive energy in this episode. I'm glad that she gives Kazuki motivation to move on. She's like, it's okay to grieve, but don't sit there and be stagnant in it. Like, move forward. It's okay. She wouldn't want you to sit here and be grieving. She'd want you to be happy and living your life. So you can be sad on her behalf, but don't just wallow in it and think that you can't. We'll talk about the not changing thing, and where all that can go to. So I'm doing that. But, yeah, so I need Whiteboard Coon. I was sitting here like, I don't need Whiteboard Coon. I'll be fine. And then when I was about to talk about like all the subtext, I was like, I really want to list it. Right? So we have to bring out Whiteboard Coon. Why did I think in this series I wasn't going to need it? Why did I just think starting this discussion that it wouldn't happen? So, all right, we're going to talk about subtext, and I'm just going to put a little BL-esque here on the side, because let's be real, it was here in this episode quite a bit, and I was like, you might as well just come out and say it, show. Again, that's, I think, another thing that people relate to Skate the Infinity with this show is because in Skate the Infinity, especially in the official art, they're one kiss away from it being a BL. I mean, it's practically that already, but they're just one step away from the character saying, I love you, and then that would be it. But it's pretty much there. You kind of get the inference. And this series is slowly getting there to that point. I'm fine with Karin being a one-episode character. What I was afraid of with her introduction in the preview from last episode, she comes in all being like, and it kind of has this like devil-esque yandere smile. I was afraid that she was going to be this driving force to wedge Kazuki and Rey apart, that was going to be a thing. And I'm glad it's not that. She was only smiling because she's a genuinely nice person and she knows Q. Everybody knows Q-chan. Q-Taro, they're all friends with him. Everybody is. He's Mr. Popular, right? But everything's fine in terms of that. And she's like, oh, it's been a while. So she's seen him before. And she's like, where's Kazuki? And meanwhile, he's staring at the flowers. And he says he hates this time of year because it constantly reminds him of the woman he was going to marry. They were going to get married, right? They were going to have a family. So he's never been married before. They were going to get married, going to have a kid. And then that ended up not happening at all. So, and he's just kind of bummed about it, which I have an aunt who lost her husband very young, and it's been like 6 or 7 years and she's still grieving. Yeah, it's a thing. And especially losing a spouse, and losing a spouse or losing a child is the hardest thing you can go through. So it's understandable that he's still going to grieve her. That's not going to change. But the idea is that he's not letting himself move forward. He just keeps staying in this same cycle. And it almost seems like after he lost her, he just kind of spiraled and was staying in the same place. And Q makes the observation, he's like, you have been changing, but that's not a bad thing. You can change for the better while still holding on to that love you had for that other person. And that's what he's afraid of. He's afraid of losing that memory of her. And then we see Mary, and compared to the picture of her, she has the green eyes and the brown hair. Mary looks like a combination of her and him, that he's got the golden eyes and so does Mary, but her hair is brunette like his wife's, or like his would-be wife's. I was like, he came to pick me up with an umbrella, so let's cheer. It's really cute. It's adorable. And then she loses the umbrella and it goes out into the road. Now it makes sense where she goes out into the road and Kazuki stops her, and then the truck hits it, and that, like, he gets instant PTSD from that moment and seeing the umbrella fly away. Oh my gosh, that scene was horrifying. Yeah, no. And then her favorite umbrella gets ruined. Will say for the record, guys, your replacement umbrella, I'm glad Mary liked it because it wasn't as cute as this one. They tried. It wasn't as cute. It matched her raincoat perfectly, but we'll forgive you guys. It's okay. And then she's sad because her umbrella's broke. It was her favorite one. I like that Kazuki has the more casual clothes on for this. He's like, I'll buy you a new one soon. Aw, she's like, okay. And then he just remarks how he hates this time of year. Aw. So then we have our OP. We'll cut back through that. Karin's not in the OP, which makes sense. She's a one episode character, right? I was kind of hoping that I had different options of what she could do in this episode. For a moment, I was like, well, maybe she could become like a nanny to them. But then I'm like, then what does Kazuki do? Because him and Rey kind of have that dynamic already. And then I'm like, well, she could watch Mary, but that's just, she's not an assassin or a hitman, so that's just getting her involved with their line of business. And she kind of wants to know what Kazuki does for a living, and he doesn't want to tell her because he doesn't want her to know what he was doing when he was with her sister. So yeah, it makes sense why she can't be involved. I am sad she didn't get to meet Rey or Mary. I feel like by the end of the episode, she was kind of encouraging him, being like, I wonder what all Q told her. Because she said, oh, you've taken in a relative's kid. But I wonder if Q told her that he was raising her with someone else, if that was on the table. I kind of wanted her to meet Rey, but it's fine that they didn't. But man, so the idea of, I was kind of sad too at the end of this episode that we didn't get to see how Rey woke up and responded to Kazuki. I was waiting for him to like wake up and be like looking at Kazuki like, oh, you're back. But we get to them with the French toast. I feel like, but we see at the end of the episode, Rey is trying to cook. So it seems like show don't tell, without telling us, the audience, Rey making the French toast is his way of trying to take on some responsibility and help Kazuki out, which is golden, right? It's golden. Even though Kazuki's like, you can't make French toast for shit. He'll just have to teach him, off screen how to make French toast, and y'all can write AO3 fan fictions on it and post them online so I can read them. Please. Oh my God. But yeah, telling Rey that he needs a towel. I love that he's just like, what are you doing? And we see the racer's there and he's like, oh, welcome back. I like Rey's shirt with the cat in the coffee cup. It's great. And he says, welcome back. Oh my God. I love that Rey's like, this is me watching Mary. What did you expect me to be doing? I love he says, need a towel. And he's like, I'm busy here at the moment. Oh my gosh. And then he steps on the water. Yeah. Anytime you get your socks wet in your house, it's just the grossest. He's like, come on. After rain comes fair weather. The moment I saw that title, I was like, okay, we are probably going to have a happy ending this episode. That's great because I don't need angst and drama. We still got 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We still got 6 more episodes. This is only the halfway point. I feel like this first half of the season has been setting up Rey and Kazuki's dynamics of parenting. And I feel like this episode being the halfway point, Rey has come to realize just how much Kazuki does for their family. Rey's like, oh yeah, Kazuki is like, I didn't know where the hospital was. I didn't know about the medicine. He's like, I didn't know what to do, the schedule. Like, Rey realizes in this episode all that Kazuki is doing for them. So that gives me hope that moving forward, Rey is going to pitch in more and try to help balance things out with him and Kazuki and them raising Mary. And that's going to be important moving into the rest of the season because we still have, I feel, Rio to deal with, the assassin, and also Rey's family. I feel like they're going to be integral to all this. We'll see. Next episode is the rule of 8, so see how that goes. But yeah, after rain comes fair weather. We've had an episode dealing with Rey's past. Now we need to deal with Kazuki's past before we can move forward, right? Rey's past came really early. It was episode 3, and that was Rey realizing that he didn't have much of a childhood, and his father was kind of, a jerk, to say the least. And so by the end of that episode, Rey decides that he wants to become a dad and wants to move forward, and kind of he gets to enact some of his childhood through Mary. This episode, Kazuki kind of faces his inner demons and is able to move forward by the end of it. But yeah, so anyway, so we have the them washing the clothes. I love Mary saying thank you for the food, and Kazuki and Rey does the same. And he's like, Rey, papa. It's like, can we play more Mario Kart? Also, if you notice this episode, Rey, he finally did get some gym shorts. He's not wearing jeans working out. But it feels like Rey is dressed in more loose clothing, like he's in more casual, like maybe he feels more comfortable around the house, like he feels more comfortable around Rey and Mary. Seems like that's like a little visual thing, a clue that they throw out to us in the episode. He's not as restrictive. He's still sleeping in the bathtub, which I want him to get into a bed. And then I like the Kazuki's like, I can't take doing all of this myself. And I kind of understand that, right? I remember when I was a kid, my mother kind of went through the same thing that Kazuki was going through, where my dad and my brother didn't really clean up or do stuff for a week. And my mom was like, okay, y'all are going to have to help. She's like, I'm not the maid. I'm not doing this on my own. So you're going to have to pitch in. I was like, That Kazuki was throwing some major mom vibes in this episode. And he's like, where's the big towel? She's like, the one I've got to take to daycare. And he's like, oh, that one. And he's like, Rey, where is it? The terry cloth towel. I like that Rey's got his headphones on with his 8-pack. And Kazuki's like, are you kidding me? He's like, Earth to Rey! And then he sees it, but he's not sewn the label on it. I love Kazuki's like, come on. I feel him, right? And so while she's in the shower, he's looking for a sewing kit. And that's when he sees the picture of her. I'm glad they finally show us the picture of her at the end, because I'm glad that we finally get to see her at the end. Also, there are 2 plants that are on his windowsill there. There is an aloe plant and there's a cactus. And that seems like a representation of him and Rey, right? That you have the cactus that's Rey that seems prickly, but it's kind of mushy on the inside. And then you have Kazuki, who's like the aloe plant, right? That needs a little maintenance, but it's kind of like, it makes aloe vera. It makes a healing balm, Also, want to say that Kazuki has this really awesome setup with 4 screens. I have 3 screens for work. I want the 4th screen. But then we see him and her. and he just can't look at the picture. I was waiting for Rey to find the picture when he was going to look for the medicine. I was waiting for Rey to stumble on the picture when he was looking through the drawers, but he does not get that, right? Which now he'll be able to see it if he goes in that room. And he's like, Papa Rey, can I play Mario Kart too? And then he puts the picture back. So yeah, she just passed out in her room. Also, the plant in her room is getting taller. There's like little details to show a passage of time. Like the plant that they planted is getting bigger. That's a cool little thing. And then we have Unasaka Mary. You gotta step, and I like, he's like, you gotta step up with taking care of Mary. And Rey's like, I am? I feel like Rey, who has no parenting experience at all, like Kazuki who thinks he knows parenting or wants to know, Rey's like, I kind of am, right? Like, I'm playing with her and stuff. He's like, I am. And he's like, how are you being a parent? I love this. He's like, we play games with him. I love that Rey gets more and more expressions as this season goes on. This episode, his face was so expressive, whether it was him being terrified or being like, But I like that when he looks over at Kazuki, he's like, I do play with her. Like, his eyebrows. Rey had some serious eyebrow game in this episode where he was like, we play games and stuff. Like, you know, like him and Kazuki are getting more and more close in terms of their relationship and how casual they are with one another. And he's like, it's not like you leave the house anyway, dude. Dude, bro, we're partners, bro. You could help me out a little more with Mary. And then Rey's like, I'm doing my best. And Kazuki's like, I don't doubt it. I feel like Kazuki's like, I don't doubt that you're doing your best, but you need to step up your best. Get better. So I like the idea that we have, and this is not exactly a subtext, but Kazuki and Rey getting more casual and open in their communication. Like, Rey has gone from saying like one-word sentences to being more vocal, right? Which is really something, right? And Kazuki is more like communicative of what he's expecting out of all of this, right? So anyway, he goes with all the groceries. He's like, something's gotta give. He's like, I need somebody to help. And that's kind of where I thought Karin would come in, but I'm glad she didn't. I'm glad that they're still gonna keep their dynamic. But I like Kazuki's like, Rey's gotta step it up because like I can't do it all alone. And when he sees her, he like goes into the alleyway. Like, what's she doing here? And then they're like, oh, Kazu-kun. So these two girls, right? These two girls. What brings you to this part of town that are in like the nurse costume and the lady of the night? These two ladies are like, they're in the OP, but I'm like, oh my God, these girls are fabulous. Because she's like, what's up, Kazuki? Aren't you going to hang out with us? But he's like, shh, no. Like, we've been lonely without you. And they're basically just trying to lure him in so he'll spend money with them. He's like, oh, no. He's like, I've got a prior engagement. And like, we haven't seen you in forever. And then the one woman goes, you didn't get a proper sweetheart, did you? Because he's got food and stuff. And it's not just for like two people. It's a meal for a family. And Kazuki's like, oh, well, And they're like, say it isn't so. And like, and he doesn't deny it. He's like, oh, sorry, I've got plans. And they're like, make each other happy. Okay, so the two girls think that Kazuki has a sweetheart. And I like that they frame it that way because they don't say, oh, you've got a girlfriend or you've got a hot date with a girl, right? No, they just say sweetheart. That could be a guy, could be a girl, either way. And Kazuki doesn't deny it. He goes, I gotta go, I have plans. Meaning that he's with someone. And they're like, make each other, and they say make, and a big theme of this episode is make each other happy. That's a big theme of this episode, is the idea of moving forward and making one happy. And then the one girl's like, he's moved on. Like, I hope these girls are so supportive of him and Rey. I want them to be so badly. I'm like, yes, support him. And then he's all about being happy, huh? And I feel like for a long time, Kazuki doesn't want to be happy because he doesn't think he deserves it because he was responsible for her death. He doesn't think that he deserves to be happy because she died. And he feels responsible for it. And he's like, I do the laundry, I wash the dishes, I get Mary a bath, I do the laundry, I wash the dishes. And he's like, is this supposed to be happy? I like that he's like, how can I be happy if all this is going down? And then she's like, she just wants to come up. And he's like, no, you can't pull on me. It's not safe. And he calls for Rey. I like that he's going to go yell at her. And then she looks at him he's like, don't you want to play with me? And he's like, and like, he just realizes like, where is Rey? Rey, get out here. We make note that them calling for each other. Make note of that. Honestly, the part where she gets sick and Rey calls from the bathtub, he's like, Kazuki! Like, he calls out for him. Like, oh, Like, he called for him. He was wanting him to come out real bad. And then that's when he goes to get the package. The Rakuzan, which was the umbrella, right? And then the two of them. And they don't unpack the umbrella until the end, right? But he makes them the food. Now, honestly, again, Kazuki reminds me a lot of my mother in this, because my mother's made some food sometimes that, like, my family has not liked. But, you know, you just kind of, like, you don't complain about it because she spent time making it. But you just kind of, like, push it aside and just eat what you do. But I remember there was a meal when we were kids, and I don't like tomatoes. I'm like, no. And so my mom was like, then just don't eat it. You know, but she didn't take the food away like Kazuki does. But I know this feeling quite a lot, where he's just like, he's trying to say, like, am I really happy? What does that even mean? And they're both complaining. And I love that Rey and her are so the same. And Kazuki's like, then I'll just take this away. And they don't get it. They're so oblivious. They're like, oh, so you're going to make a sweet stuff instead. Cool. We want pancakes. And then he just can't take it. He's like, am I your maid? Do you think that I'm a maid or something? And then he just storms off. And I like that Rey's like, you left me with a kid. Did I do something wrong? I don't exactly know what a maid is like an assistant. I love that, again, people were saying in the comments that it's really funny because Rey can talk to Mary and explain things on her level where she understands them. Kazuki struggles sometimes with communicating with Mary, but Rey has this instant way of explaining things to where she can understand them, and it's absolutely precious. I freaking love it. I love his expressions in this episode. Again, Rey is like a cat. Rey is like a cat that's slowly been warming up to you over the course of this season. And by this episode, he's gotten to where he's comfortable around you. So he's opened up a lot more. It's absolutely wonderful. I freaking love it. But she wakes Rey up, and dude's still in his clothes from earlier. And then he realizes that Kazuki has left. And I love how his expression changes. I love Rey's expression being like, that bastard left me with all the stuff to do. Like, I just love that his face slowly morphs when he realizes what he has yet to do with her. That was absolutely hilarious. Where he's like, are you kidding me? And he opens up the fridge, and there's clearly stuff there that he can eat. And she's like, food. He's like, which is the food? Because he's not had to do any of it. And so he gives her the cereal that Kazuki doesn't want her to have, because he's like, well, it's the easiest thing we can fix. Right? And then she doesn't know, she's 4 years old, she doesn't know the concept of going to the daycare or not, so she thinks they have to go, and he's like, he, panics and doesn't check anything, and then she's like, well, how do I help you get ready? And he just stuffs it in there, and she's like, hurry, papa. And then she didn't bring the umbrella. I love his outfit, though, too, where he has, like, the cinched up cargo pants and the shirt. It's not something we've seen Rey in for the longest time. Also, him with the like trying to like push in the rain. Again, the expressions on Rey's face, I'm living for it. And I was like, when she said so cold so fast, I'm like, you're gonna give that girl a cold. She's gonna have a cold by the end of this episode, Rey. What are you doing with your life? And so Q, meanwhile, Q's having the time of his life. Q is just loving Kazuki being like tortured. And he's like, so you ran off, huh? He's like, that's the only way to get Rey to look after Mary. He's like, Mary needs to appreciate how much I do for her. I was like, Kazuki, she's 4 years old. She's not going to know appreciation at that age. No. And I love that he's like, I do all the damn washing and all the damn laundry. And all they do is play games all day. And then they bitch about my food. And Q saying, you're having a lot of fun, aren't you? Like, and then Kazuki's like, well, what part of that sounds fun to you? And that's the thing, is that Q's like, you actually are, you're complaining about it, but you're actually having a good time with this family. And he points out that Kazuki has changed. He's like, you've really changed. And that becomes like a trigger to him, where Kazuki doesn't know if he wants to change because he doesn't want to forget his fiance and all that. And Q's kind of heartwarmed by it, he's very excited for Kazuki. And Kazuki's not sure. He's like, what are you getting at? He says, your sister-in-law returned it again. She won't take it. It's like, you need to talk this out with her. So it's the idea that he's been trying to pay her off and pay her this money, but not talk things out about her sister with him. He's been trying just to avoid the subject and give her money to not have to talk with her. And he's like, it's the anniversary and it's been 5 years. And I do think Kazuki has the right when he says you need to get over. I think Kazuki is right, because telling somebody to get over the loss of someone they loved, it's hard, and you can't just tell someone to get over it. There are some people that will grieve their entire lives, right? But I think what he's trying to get at is that Kazuki does need to move forward. He can't just sit there and wallow in despair. You can still grieve for someone you love. You can still grieve and feel sad about it, but you can't let it devour you, or you'll just be in this pit of despair. And would that person want that for you? And Kazuki is just not ready to hear that. He's like, I'm going to treat myself on a night on the town, or a day on the town. And Q's like, Kazuki. And he sees the flowers, and he just moves on. He's like, where will I live it up first? What I was expecting to happen was that he was going to get to the casino and everything he wasn't going to feel any meaning from it, but instead he gets beat up. So it works out anyway. But poor Ray, like, they're soaked, the two of them. They get there and she's like, how come no one's here? And that's when he sees that it was closed, right? So we cut back to Kazuki. He's at the casino with the girls. He's excited. He's like, I'm on fire today. They're all excited because he's giving them money. Right? And he's like, oh, this rocks. And meanwhile, Ray's like, I'm exhausted. Ray's like, I can't take this. He's like, no, I can't. And then she's sitting there playing. And then he sees all of her stuff on the ground getting the floor wet. And I love that he's like, oh my God. Like, I feel like Ray, by the end of this, did realize all that Kazuki did for them. And I feel like he is grateful by the end of it. Especially when he offers to make the French toast. And then he's like, a toast to Kazukun's hot streak. And he's got all the girls. I like this one hooker here. He's like, you girls order whatever you want. I like the one girl's like, I want pizza. I'm with this girl. I love this girl. She's sitting there drinking, being like, can we order some pizzas up in this? If I was her, I'd say the same thing. Be like, can we get some pizzas while we're here? That's just so freaking hilarious. I love that. And they're like, that's for poor people. Order sushi. True story. You order pizza if you're poor. You get sushi when you're feeling fancy. But I'm like, pizza and sushi are my favorite foods, so I would go with either. I'm like, that works either way. And of course, Mary starts to get sick as she's around the little hippo. And Ray, who doesn't know signs of kids getting sick. He doesn't read the signs. He doesn't know. But she says she's hungry, and he's like, he's like, should we get pizza? She's like, yeah! That sounds exactly what my dad would do. My dad would be like, my dad is a good cook, but he'd be like, you want to order takeout or something? Instead of fixing food. That's exactly how he would respond. And so he says, one medium supreme, please. And she says, no tomatoes and no green peppers. And she's like, oh, Kazuki says we need to eat our veggies. And he's like, okay, and an order of fries. I love that Ray's like, yeah, okay, fries. That's a potato. That's a vegetable, right? Yeah, that's God. What bro logic. I love it. I love that Miri is like so handsy and like physical with Ray, and he's just like totally fine with it. Our cat. And so Kazuki, he gets drunk. He's like, it's been a while since I got hella drunk. True, if you've drank before and then you don't drink for a long time, one drink's enough to do it, much less anything else. And that's when he bumps into this one guy. He's like, how'd it get to be so late? And then he sees the kid with the umbrella, talking about the mom. And Kazuki's just like, ugh. He's like, family. He's about to say family my ass, I think. But then he runs into this guy. And this guy he's like, who are you? And then, of course, Kazuki is kind of hot-headed, right? Rey goes in guns a-blazing, and is like, what's funny is that Rey goes in guns a-blazing normally, and Kazuki's the one to hold him back. But Kazuki's kind of the one that when it's on the other foot, he's the one that kind of spirals, and Rey kind of holds and reins back. So again, the balance between these two, right? The balance that they are like a yin and yang, right? Two sides of a similar coin. But that look on Kazuki's face where he gets all frustrated up in that guy's face before they beat the crap out of him. And then Rey and them eat all the pizza, but Rey gets kind of worried because he doesn't know if Kazuki's coming back. When he tells Mary that he thinks that Kazuki's abandoned them, I'm like, Rey, why did you say that to a 4-year-old? Of course she's freaked out. He says, I'll be out for a while. And he's like, I think that we've been abandoned. And she's like, oh no! And then Kazuki gets thrown in the trash. And Kazuki's thing is that he doesn't see any value in himself. He doesn't see himself worthwhile, right? He feels like he can be in the slums, be in the gambling casinos, like go with all the ladies and stuff like that because he doesn't feel like he's worthy of actual affection and a relationship. And it's like, but you are, Kazuki. Don't sell yourself short. He's like, someone like me belongs in the trash. And then he goes back to what Masaki told him about the ones with the loftiest ideals bring the greatest misfortune to their families. Which again, I feel like he thought back then that he could have the hitman lifestyle and then all. I thought he probably thought he could have it all. He could keep doing what he was doing as being a hitman, but also have the woman and have a family. And back then it didn't work. It's not to say that it can't work in this situation, but back then it couldn't work. And then he just calls himself pathetic. And then that's when he sees who he thinks. He says Yuzuko. It's Yuzuko, and then instead it's Karin. Which isn't, I feel like that's kind of a Bleach reference, because aren't Karin and Yuzu the sisters in Bleach? Aren't those the twins? Isn't Yuzu and Karin the twins in Bleach? Right? Is that right? Is this a Bleach play on Bleach? That'd be kind of cool if it was, because his former flame was Yuzuko. Really? Wait, I'm gonna actually, that's so funny, because the Bleach, what are the Bleach twins' names? The Bleach twins are, Yuzu and Karin! They are! Oh my gosh, it's a Bleach reference! That's actually amazing! Oh my gosh, and there's a brother named Ichigo. Oh my god, that's great! But Q said that Karin was her only living relative. So she's the only one of that family left, right? Okay. That's an amazing reference. I actually love that to pieces. And she's genuinely worried about him. Now, she seems much younger, so she seems like she's in her early 20s maybe, which he's like in his mid to late 20s. And he's like, oh, it's been a while. And she's like, what are you doing in the garbage? And she wants to talk to him, but she's like, I don't know what line of work you're in, but I can't accept the money no matter how much it is. I don't need it anyway. And then he's like, fine, then I won't send it. And that, oh man, the voice acting where she's like, it's not your fault that my sister died. And he's like, no, I killed her. That voice acting when he said it was like, oof. Like that was such good voice acting. And then, but he didn't technically kill her. It's not totally his fault. And so we get the idea that he was chasing after this guy on foot and was going after him and has like the trench and everything. And then that guy was stealing the car from someone, gets in the car and goes. And then Rio, who's up there on the roof, was sniping. He sniped the tire, which got him to go in, which caused him to hit the truck. And then at that moment, across the street was his pregnant girlfriend. And she saw him. So there's that idea that not only that she didn't know what he was involved in, so there's the idea that not only did he inadvertently cause possibly her death by not getting that guy to begin with, and then Rio kind of sealed the deal, but there's not only that, but there's the idea that she saw him in that moment and possibly saw him for who he was as a hitman. And so it was like it was like stabbing yourself twice in the heart, right? Oh my gosh. I thought she was in the car when it blew up, but no, she was standing right outside of it. And then it blew up. Oh my God. Yeah, how would you not be messed up by that? How could you not be messed up? And then seeing the flowers. And then that poor guy with Kazuki with the rain falling down like a tear, like, ugh. But then here, we cut from that, from him looking up at the sky getting rained on. We cut from that to Rey in the tub with Mary, and she's hot, right? Because she's sick. And when he calls out for Kazuki, yeah, he calls out for him. And meanwhile, he's going to visit his lady's grave. Now, 38.5, that's like over 100. That's a fever. And Rey at least knows that much. And so he tries to call Kazuki. He's not picking up his phone. And so he's like, hang on. I love that he says, hang on. He like goes to get her medicine. But Rey is luckily perceptive enough that he finds, I want to see if there's anything else in those drawers. We see like a flash drive. We see a tape measure, pins and stuff. We see there's all sorts of things. And we see all-purpose cold medicine, right? And he's like, oh, good. But then he looks on the back and sees that it's not recommended for 12 and under. So he's like, damn it, I can't use it. And then Rey's saying, I can't do anything. That was so sad because Rey's like, I just want to help. He's like, nothing's worked out at all. He's like, I've not been able to do anything. It's like he's realizing all this about himself. It's so sad. He's like, I can't do anything. And then she asks for him. And so she's like sweating through her clothes. And he goes to take her to a hospital, but then he doesn't know where a hospital is. Bless him. He's like, where's the hospital? And then we cut to Yuzuku. And we assume that she was still pregnant when she died, but there's nothing there. And then Karin's been following him. And then for Rey to come in, he's like, Kyotaro-san, help me. With Mary, like, bless his heart. And Q's like, oh my gosh. She's like, well, here we go. And so we find out how they met. That he had been injured during a job. And of course, he meets her with the umbrella. And that's how they meet for the first time. And then I love how gloomy it is in the shot with him and Karin under the rain. Mm-hmm. And then she talks with him. She's like, this is where you guys first met. She's like, I was happy when she said she was going to marry you. And he keeps saying that he's sorry to her, that he took away her sister from her. And he says she was nice, beautiful, and always smiling. Which Rey is beautiful and nice, just not always smiling. Yet. And she's like, so the thought that you only remember her sad looking is really tragic. It doesn't seem right. He's like, it's been 5 years. It's okay. I like she doesn't tell him to get over it, but she's like, it's okay. And he's like, I'm scared. I love that. He's like, I'm scared of changing, of forgetting what I did and letting her die, of being fulfilled by something else. Yeah, so it's that fear. It's that fear of forgetting her. And being fulfilled in something else. Which, again, without spoiling anything, that reminds me a lot of Given, because there's a character in Given that's lost someone and they start a new relationship, and there is kind of that what if of, how do you reconcile with moving forward when you've lost someone that you loved, and you want to honor that memory of them, and you still want to love them, but you also want to open up your heart to potentially loving someone else and letting someone else in. How do you do that? What kind of balance is that? And so it's kind of what Kazuki's going through. He's like, he says it feels almost guilty to be fulfilled in possibly loving someone else. And so he's just like, I don't know if I can do that. And so, yeah. And she's like, it's okay if you do, that's, she probably wouldn't want you to be single and alone your entire life. So there's a nice little subtext here. If he doesn't know if he wants to have this relationship with Rey because, even if you want to consider it platonic or romantic, because he's like, he feels like it's betraying his relationship with Yuzuko. And then he's like, of her slipping out of my memory. Yeah. And then he doesn't want to forget her. And he's like, that's why I don't want to change. And she says, well, she's like, I get that, but memories aren't a prison. She's like, you're not stuck there. And she says, I'm going to go study abroad. She's like, I'm leaving. She's like, I'm going to France. She's like, I'm going to study fashion in France, not art. But she's like, it's a place I've always wanted to go to. And I finally passed their exam. And she's like, my sister encouraged me with that. So I know that she would want me to go on and do that and not just sit here and kind of wallow in grief. And she's like, I know that Yuzuko would want you to move on and for you to be happy. She's like, she always encouraged that for me. So I came to tell her that I made it. And she's like, why not live your own life too? That'd make her way more happy than anything else that you could do. And he's like, make her happy. We go back to that idea of happiness. He's been wondering what it means to be happy in this scenario and what he can do to make her happy. And she's like, yeah, you just got to move forward and do your own thing. As her little sister, I guarantee it. Yeah, so she is the younger sister. And he's like, damn it, that ain't fair, because you can speak on her behalf. And then he's like, I know about you taking in a relative's kid. And he's like, oh, Q-chan. He's like, it's not really a big deal. She just fell into my lap. Literally. And she's like, oh, that's cool too. Are you having fun? He's like, no, she's a huge handful. She doesn't do anything I tell her. She's like, well, I know you can make her happy too. And that's when like he realizes that he does have that ability. He can make her happy, even if he's not happy himself. I love the sun coming out. It's so sweet. It's beautiful. I love it. All the different chrysanthemums and everything. Mm-hmm. I love it. And Kazuki's such a big softie. I love it. I love her looking at him like, aw, you big softie. And then Rey, he comes home and there's pizza. There's stuff everywhere. He's like, why am I not surprised? Should I be surprised? No, probably not. And then he goes to her room, and I'm sorry, but Rey in her bedroom holding Mary's hand in his own and falling asleep next to her is the cutest thing in the world. That is parental perfection right there. I freaking love it. Kazuki's like, and he sees the medicine. And Kazuki's like, oh crap, she's sick. And then he sees Rey with her. I wanted him to ruffle his hair so badly. I would have given like anything for him to have reached over and ruffled the hair. I was waiting for it, but damn it, the show's not going to give us that yet. And then just that sweet look. I was like, come on. That sweet look between Rey and Kazuki. Like Kazuki realizing that this buffoon who can't cook, who can only play video games, makes him happy. I'm like, come on. And then we get the messed up French toast. He's like, is this French toast? And Rey's like, I made the food. I love that Rey has a little apron on. She's like, eat it. And he's like, okay. I love the look between Rey and Mary. Like, come on, do you like it? Please tell us you like it. I love it. He's like, okay. She's like, is it good? And he's like, well, I love Rey's pensive, like, well, did it turn out? And Kazuki's like, I'm going to have to make you French toast, aren't I? And Rey's like, I tried my best. And I like that Kazuki's just cheesing them. And then she has the new umbrella. And then we see Yuzu and him at the place that they met. Friggin' cute. Friggin' adorable. I love it. I love this episode. It was so sweet. So we have Kazuki's backstory now. Got Kazuki's backstory. Got Rey's backstory. We know who Karin is. Q's onto everything. We're getting more context with Ryo, the hitman. That he maybe was working with Kazuki before, so they might actually know each other from the past. Okay. So that leaves us with 6 more episodes to go. We're only at the halfway point. I feel like we needed this first half of the season to set up the parenting with Rey and Mary and Kazuki, to set up that Kazuki truly is on board. I'm glad we got this episode out of the way now with Kazuki's past, because we've gotten to the point where Kazuki is on board with being a dad with Rey. We know Rey's on board. Rey is way on board. He proved this episode he was absolutely all in with Mary, but now Kazuki is too. So I'll be curious moving forward to see how their dynamic still changes. And to see, like, if we get more with Rio. I feel like Rey's family is going to come in the second half. We've got Kazuki's family out of the way. We understand Kazuki doesn't have any parents. His sister, his wife's sister, or his fiance's sister was the only one still alive in that side of the family. Now we have Rey's family to worry about. So, but this episode was super adorable, and I loved it. So, lots of subtext. Time to change, Kazuki. Maybe change, you and Rey, something different than what you're used to. Might not be a bad thing. The girls at the bar are for it. So, Karin seems for it. So, in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, but I'll be back very soon with the Rule of 8, y'all. The Rule of 8 for episode 8 of Buddy Daddies. Bye.